Hi everyone. This is Emma Fleur, and here's my identity text. So first, I'll start with my family. So I have a somewhat large nuclear family when compared to other American families at this in this time period. So I have a family of six with my parents, an older sister, a twin sister, and a younger brother. Oh, and then here are some pictures of my siblings, my parents, and whatnot. So I grew up in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, which of course is a place that formed me. If I grew up somewhere different, I definitely would have turned out different. My personality would be a little different. So Portsmouth is a bedroom community. It is mostly white and middle class. Um, it has a very strong Navy presence, and I'll talk about more about the Navy later. Um, And as an island, it is because it's part of Aquidneck Island. It's actually 2 towns away from Newport, if you know where Newport is. Um, like my band teacher in high school would always tell us that we had an island mentality. We didn't want to socialize with other people when we left the island. We were kind of afraid to go out there and see what was new and what was different. Um, Myself, not so much as some of the others. There's definitely a portion of kind of island mentality that says kind of the stereotypical Rhode Islander that driving 45 minutes is a day trip, but for the island, if it's off the island, it's too far. I now live in Seekonk, Massachusetts. I'm no longer in Portsmouth, but there is kind of that piece of that once I left the island, it was kind of a new world, I guess. So my ancestry, I didn't really do the interview for my ancestry in coming to the United States because it's so far back that no one really knows any specifics. So I just used, I did the Ancestry.com DNA test recently, and this is the results from that. So from what I knew, and the ancestry numbers match this. From my mother's side, I am part English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, German, and Dutch. Um, if you look at that and if you're interested in history or immigration history, these are kind of the first waves of immigration to the United States. And then on my father's side, kind of a more recent immigrant, but still at least three, maybe 4 or 5 generations back. I am French Canadian, which explains my last name being Lafleur. So, for my mother and her side of the family, my maternal grandfather's ancestry can actually be traced back to the Mayflower, which is kind of cool. Um, so, my family has been in the United States for hundreds of years. And so I don't really connect with any of the kind of the countries of this ancestry. All of these European countries, I don't really connect with them because it's too far back. So both my maternal grandparents were actually both born in Ohio. So this is kind of where the Navy comes in. Obviously, if I was born in the Midwest, like my grandparents were, I would have been very different. And most of my family on that side still lives in the Midwest. But both of my grandparents joined the Navy. And even though they were both born in Ohio, they were born in separate parts. So they actually met when they were in the Navy and got married. And so my mother was actually born in Maryland. And I'll go to the next slide. But as a Navy brat, she moved around a lot. And she actually also lived on Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, in addition to Maryland, until my grandfather was stationed in Newport. And that's where he retired. And so that's kind of where I came to be. As a French Canadian, I'll talk about this later. My father grew up in Fall River because a lot of French Canadians stayed in this area. And so, without kind of being in the Navy, my mother would never have come up to the Northeast, never would have met my father, and then I never would have been here. Um, so, when talking about kind of this, instead of migration to the United States, more of the migration to New England, And being a Navy brat, my mom said that kind of it was nice because Navy bases were always small communities, especially the one in Cuba. Um, and the one down below talks about Cuba, where she says she knew everyone. She was only 8, but she could hitchhike and catch a ride home. And there was always something to do, and she still finds people that she knew when she lived on Guantanamo Bay on Facebook. Um, but so she kind of liked it because it was a small community, but she always hated moving and losing all of her friends. But whenever they moved to a new area, there were always kids who were also Navy brats like her waiting to meet her and her sister. So, being from Portsmouth, I was actually on the receiving end of that. I made all throughout elementary school and middle school, I became really, really close somehow with all the Navy brats, and they always left me. So, it was kind of sad. Um, so I kind of there's that I kind of feel what my mother felt, except that I was the one that stayed behind, whereas she was the one that kind of moved on. So I couldn't complete an identity text on myself without talking about my grandfather. Um, and he passed away when I was 11. And that was almost 14 years ago. But you might hear my voice shaking. Um, because even though that was so long ago, he really helped shape me as a person. He was a Vietnam veteran, but I learned almost everything from him, from what to value in life, kind of not the material things. He always said, when we went shopping, we told him we came back and we told him we got him his favorite thing, which was nothing. Don't value the material things. To what respect looks like, if we were making brownies or something. He got us on the bus in the morning, he got us off the bus in the afternoon, and he took us in the summer because both my parents worked full-time jobs. So if we were doing something, we all had to help. So if we were making a cake, making brownies, if you did not help, you did not get a piece, kind of. So respect and really doing your part, and just kind of interacting, card games, and I miss him every day, but he really did kind of form me. And he would always say things like, "It'll put hair on your chest," or "It'll make your hair curl." And of course, as a little girl, I always thought, I don't think I really want hair on my chest. But I know that what he was really trying to say was be strong or be brave. Good things will come out of it. So my father and his side of the family, like I said, my father grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts. He was part of a working class family, also of 6, who struggled to make ends meet. And so kind of both of my parents had a very different life than the one that they were able to give their children, as a middle class, very settled down family. Um, but of course, it always wasn't always like that. My father actually worked when growing up. My father actually worked 2 jobs, his full-time job on the weekdays, and on the weekends he drove a tow truck for AAA. While my mother went to school during nights for 10 years to get her bachelor's degree. So kind of they really showed us you really have to work for it. You really have to keep going, and keep pushing, keep persevering, because if you just keep going, you can make it. And that's kind of the model that they made for us. So something that I kind of learned from my other grandfather, my Pepe, and like I said, the French Canadian is many generations back, but my Meme and my Pepe, we still use the French words. So my Pepe was actually an alcoholic in my father's younger years, which resulted in I guess, a nasty divorce between my Meme and my Pepe. And what happened was 2 of my father's sisters, my aunts, never spoke to their father again. Up until until he died. He's passed away about 5 years now, 6 years. Um, and that really taught me that stubbornness, and I don't know if you know any French Canadians, but French Canadians are very stubborn and very set in their ways. But that really taught me that stubbornness will only lead to more heartache. That family is super valuable. It's kind of what we have in this world from the day we're born to the day we die. That people really can change. I never knew my Pepe as an alcoholic. I knew him as, a great man who did everything he could. He really did his best to be a loving grandfather. And it also taught me that forgiveness can mean everything. My father reached out to his father after the divorce and after I don't know what else went down. And that meant the difference between me having a grandfather while some of my cousins did not have him. So, weird transition, but I didn't know how else to make this transition. So after high school, kind of the family background, all of that, I moved on and I went to Rhode Island College. And I studied history and secondary education. And it really, Rick opened up doors for me. Like I said, I was from Portsmouth, fairly sheltered, mostly white. Um, and Rick is not at all like that, which I was very happy about. I didn't have strong connections in my high school, so I was really looking for these new connections in college. So I met so many people and made so many friends from all different backgrounds. Um, and and nobody had the same kind of family background as me, whether it was ethnic, racial, or just socioeconomic. We all came from different backgrounds, and it was really awesome because we could learn so much from each other. Um, and while I was in college, I studied abroad, and I went to Wales. And if you remember from the beginning, I am part Welsh. That's why I decided to go to Wales. Um, and while I was there, I visited England, Wales, obviously, Ireland, Scotland, and the Netherlands, and France, to really try to find my roots. Like I said, I'm really separated from the immigrants that came from those countries. So I really wanted to see what those places were like. And while I was there, this is kind of a small piece of what I call my Swansea family because we were in Swansea, Wales. That's where we studied. And these pictures were actually taken back in the US. So my friend here, he's from Chicago. My other friend here, she is from Queens, New York City. And then there's me. And so, um, we became so close. And when I studied abroad, it was the first time that I was really super far away where I was on my own with nobody. And so my confidence actually went up because I really became myself as a person because there were no connections. No one knew me. So I could really discover myself without the perception that everybody else had of me already. And it was really nice. So these friends, the connections that I made there are the really strong connections, the strongest connections that I've made, that I made all throughout college. And then after I graduated college, this wonderful opportunity arose. And of course, it was disguised. I had no idea how wonderful an opportunity it was. Um, that summer, after I graduated 2 years ago, I got an email from my professor that's saying that, I don't know if you found a job yet, but if you haven't, there's this thing at Central Falls that they're looking for people to do. It's a new thing. Nobody's ever tried it before, but they're kind of going for it. And I had not found a job, and I still have not totally found a job, but I'm hopeful for something maybe coming up in the next week for next year. And so I became what is called a Warrior Fellow in the Central Falls School District. And so pretty much I'm a building substitute in Central Falls High School. And I something in like that summer, I actually interviewed for a position at the school where I student taught in Coventry, and I didn't get it, but I was actually relieved that I didn't get that full-time teaching position, which may sound crazy. Um, but even just being a building sub versus a full-time teacher, something felt right about Central Falls. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what I was going into. Um, Going from Portsmouth to Central Falls is a big change. I actually told one of my teachers from high school that this is what I was doing, and he actually said, "You don't, you won't fit in there," which was totally wrong. I fit in 100%, and I love it so much. Something felt right that day when I decided to take that job, and it still feels right. I love it so much. Um, and of course, because I went to Central Falls, I found this passion for ESL that I never knew I would have had. But it is part of the reason why I went there, because I really wanted to see. I didn't have any experience in an urban school, and I was like, I'm never going to know if I don't go. And so I was really excited. And it found out that the days that I was covering the ESL classes were kind of my best days there. I loved the kids. Um, I loved learning from them, and I want to continue learning from them. I want to continue teaching for them. They are by far, in my opinion, the best kids in the school with the most potential in the school. And I want to stick with them. And so last year I applied for graduate school for TESOL URI, and of course here I am. And here's me in my CFHS swag. And so another awkward transition, but the book that I would say that I resonate with would be To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Um, like many of you may have read it. It is now common part of the curriculum in high schools. So it really resonates with me because in the book, the character Scout, she always wants to explore. She's always curious, and she wants to know everything about the world and about the people that she really doesn't know about. And what was different sometimes seems scary, but she wanted to learn, and she wanted to, like Atticus says, take a walk in somebody else's skin and walk around in it, because you don't understand the world until you can see it from someone else. And then the other character, of course, is Atticus. You know, one of the greatest characters. He really stood up against discrimination, and he did everything he could to give the best life to someone who looked different from him in a time when differences were feared and hated. He knew that good people and bad people were not determined by the color of their skin, and to live in hatred and fear meant kind of a really shallow life, as you kind of see in the book if you've read the book. So we kind of said, you know, if we get to know our neighbors, our fellow human beings, kind of this world becomes a much smaller place and a much happier one, and it's easier to live in. And so that's kind of what I want to do. I want to see the world from other points of view. I want to help these students that, you know, in this political climate, they're not always looked at favorably. And Central Falls is always in the news for bad reasons. No, the wonderful things that it does, the wonderful things that it is, it never makes it in the news for those things. It's always something bad. But kind of I want to be a part of that community and help people see it for what it really is, this really wonderful place, this tight-knit community with so much diversity that's so beautiful. And so put all of this together, Atticus and Scout, and this leads to this desire to learn about other cultures and get and to be like Atticus and stand up for people who are often looked down upon by some in the mainstream or majority culture, but can add so much to this world if they are given the chance. Um, and on top of all of it, his biggest quote is, "It's a sin to kill a mockingbird." And it's to really see the beauty in the world and cherish the small things like the mockingbird that often go unnoticed and sometimes misunderstood until we take the time to learn about them and enjoy their company. So, I mean, these are just kind of the page numbers for the quotes that I took in kind of the last page. But this one's a little different. So, this is really Scout taking that walk in Boo Radley's shoes, and really understanding how Boo Radley saw that summer, versus how she saw that summer, um, and understanding what his life was like. And then the song. I'm not going to play it because there is one piece of strong language in the beginning of the song, but you can feel free to look it up. I do really love this song. I love this artist. But in the song, he's kind of saying, sing for the fun of it. Just do it. And I really like this song because it's a reminder to me to just, be myself, be a little crazy, um, and take the time to just sometimes sing, make some noise, um, which sometimes even in the classroom, I forget about. Sometimes it's just like what we're learning. It's not about the curriculum, it's not about the teaching, it's about the moments when you're a little crazy, the moments when you're making the relationships with the students. Um, and so that's why I really like this song. And that's really it for me. I super enjoyed sharing this with you, and I am looking forward to seeing yours. Thanks.